Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. My name is Cassie Steep. I'm from Sonderly, and I'm pleased to present today's Look Ahead, ADHD and Me. And I'm excited to introduce you to our guest speakers, Brooke Freeberg and Tara Maltby. They are faculty and doctoral students coming all the way from the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And before they take it away, we want to encourage you to ask questions in the chat. And if there's time at the end, we'll do a short Q&A. Once again, I want to welcome Brooke and Tara. Hello.
Thank you. Good morning or good afternoon.
Yes.
Thank you for having us.
It's quite early there for Brooke and Tara coming from Alaska. I'm again super excited to have you, and I can't wait for your presentation. And thanks everybody for joining. Again, just take a look at the resources that we added in the top of the chat, and Brooke and Tara will share what they've got for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi everybody. I'm going to hit share here to share the screen. So I'm Brooke, obviously, since it has my name on my thing here. Let's do that.
I like that you went formal last name. I was very informal with just Tara. So try and find you friends. No.
Love that it worked the last time and now it's not. So we're going to do it this way. I apologize.
All right. While Brooke's getting that pulled up, I'll just let you know. Again, thank you everybody for joining us. We'll kind of get into it in a minute about why it's a little bit different than a straight up ADHD presentation, because we're talking about ADHD and me and our superpowers. For those of you who are familiar with ADHD or supporting students with ADHD in the classroom, not a ton is going to be groundbreaking today, but what is going to be interesting is the conversation about how, if you do find yourself kind of on that neurodivergent pathway, much like Brooke or myself, how we use that to utilize our characteristics and make our best classroom. All right, go ahead, Brooke. You got it pulled up.
I do have it pulled up. No, as Tara was mentioning, Tara and I met 3 years ago when I started working at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. And I've always been kind of self-conscious about the ADHD because I do a really good job of focusing and getting things done, but I also am very much, it's part of my personality. I was just telling Cassie and Tara prior to this, I said there's two camps of Brooke. There's the group of people who love me, and there's a group of people who don't love me, and I attribute that partly to my ADHD. So I had a question. Patricia, yes, you'll have access to our PowerPoint at the end. There's a lot of slides. We may not get through all of them. Mm-hmm. And so that way you'll be able to have access to those. In addition, in our resources and in the slides is our contact information. I want to make sure that, if you have any questions ever, Tara and I love replying to emails, especially when
imagine that.
Yes, they're not from students asking for an extension of a project that was due 8 months ago. So anyway, so my name is Brooke Freeberg again, and I, my entire life kind of struggled at school. I can remember in second grade, my mom was a teacher. And so I was referred to my school's version of like Child Find, right? Just like for testing because I wasn't performing in school. And I had a brother who's 2 years younger, and he is highly gifted and was part of the gifted program at our school. And so I had him to compare to, which is the worst thing ever. But so I was sent to Penn State University to get tested. And I can still remember, I was 7. I can remember the drive back. It was a 2-hour drive. And I remember exactly where I was sitting. My mother screamed at me for 2 hours in the car about how I was not hitting my potential and I was lazy and I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing. And I had this IQ and that I should be doing better at school. 2-hour drive. I spent the summer sitting at the kitchen table doing math sheets because I couldn't do it. I see some people are having problems with the resources. We will make sure that you get a copy of them. So if you're not able to access them, no fear. We will make sure you can get those. So anyway, I that happened, struggled all through school. Just really, I can remember trying to read. If you have ADHD, this may experience might resonate with you. Is like when I'm reading and halfway through reading a chapter, I would start making like a list in my head of what I need to do. And I would, do everything but like be able to read the thing. And I just thought, okay, I'm dumb. I can't do this. I can't do this. And so, graduated from high school. My senior year of high school, I went to my guidance counselor and I asked her, for help, like looking for scholarships and applying to college. And she laughed at me and she said, "Oh, you think that you're going to get into college?" I was not a horrible student. I went to a private Catholic school and everyone always like had 4.0s and I did not have a 4.0. And I remember thinking like, that's like, I jokingly, that's my villain origin story is Mrs. Heigl telling me that I wasn't going to go to college. And so I was like, okay, bet I'm going to go to college and I'm going to prove you wrong. I did not prove her wrong right away. I went to Clarion University in my first semester. I think that I got a 1.7 GPA. Turns out you have to read, like to do the work to be able to like, do well. And then I realized in college that when you turned something in, when your professors gave back your grade, they would put it outside their door and it was the last 3 digits of your student ID number and then your grade. And that was just clicked that I am a very competitive person. And so when I saw my grade, in the middle of that paper, I was like, no, I want my name at the top. And so I, started really hard. Like it was hard. It was never been easy, like working, like making a schedule, making a list. So today we're going to, talk about things that kind of helped us. In 2021, I have 3 boys. They are all neurodivergent, neurospicy, I like to tell Tara. So my oldest son has autism and ADHD. So if you hear yelling, that is him getting ready for school. My husband has him. I will, and he was, as a psychologist, and we were talking about him, and they were talking about his ADHD, and the doctor's like talking to me, and says something along the lines of like my ADHD. I'm like, oh, like I don't have ADHD. And the doctor laughs and goes, "I can't diagnose you, but yes, you do." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so luckily we have great health insurance. And so I went to the psychologist and I decided to get assessed because I've had anxiety. In French. They are not, Melissa, but I'm always up for a challenge.
We can figure it out.
We can figure it out. I don't speak French, but I'll figure it out. So the psychologist did the assessments and told me that he had done this for like 20 some years and that I had on the rating scale, the highest that he has ever assessed. And he asked me, he was like, "Well, what do you do for a living?" I was like, "Well, I'm a professor at a university." He's just like, the whole like chin thing. How's that going? I'm like, "I'm really successful at what I do. Like I have really high ratings. All of my students, like love me. I do a great job." And so I, so like I knew, like I've always known, but and I can remember, so my 20 years of teaching experience, which I just glossed over, I spent 20 years working with students who have severe emotional behavior disorders, a lot of them with severe ADHD. And so they were my favorite though, because it was just like teaching me, I jokingly call it like whack-a-mole. It's like, constantly kind of like figuring it out. And I tried to teach like a resource type setting and I could not do that. I needed some spice in my life. And so that's kind of like where I came from. And I think that my experience in school and my K-12 schooling career really made it that I am a staunch advocate for students with disabilities, because I had a mom who really pushed me to like, in some ways not the best, but like that I could do it, I could do anything. And so it was important that, as a teacher, that I really focus on making sure that my students knew that they can do anything and that the students I teach now are off to be teachers. And that's the thing I instill in all of them is that every student is capable of doing something. And the idea that students with disabilities are bad, I hate when people say, "Oh, they're a bad student." There are no such thing as bad students. There are students who struggle, and that's what the supports, are put in place. So, Tara.
Yes, I'm gonna take it from there. I love this part of the conversation. I was part of the hiring committee when Brooke applied to the university. We were looking for a second faculty member to complement me. And so in my head, I know how I get things done. I also get things done, but it is not a linear process. It is not pretty, but I get there. And so in my head, I'm like, okay, I would love to find somebody who is incredibly organized and very linear, and it'll be great. Like they'll be the path forward to my crazy, and for lack of a better term. And as soon as Brooke started talking and answering questions, I could tell by her speech pattern. I was like, oh, her head works just like mine. But that's okay. I could just tell by that, and it was wonderful. And I'm so glad we made that decision because we are insanely productive together. But backing up a little bit. So yeah, we recognize our own. So anybody out there who's like, hey, wait a minute, that sounds like my noggin, welcome to the family. Not that I'm diagnosing because I'm not qualified. I am a special education teacher. But for me, growing up, I climbed on everything, hugely sensory seeking, but also very much a people pleaser. And like school was not super tough for me. I would figure out where we were going to read. I would check out. I would check back in when I needed to. Like all of these, like in retrospect, strategies that I just used naturally helped me kind of get through school without anybody ever flagging anything. I definitely had a little bit of a rough time adjusting to college when I made up all my own rules, but got back on track, you can see. But I was 26 years old, I think, working in a special education classroom for individuals with severe and profound autism. It was a center-based school, and so there were a lot of intensive needs, and we had a lot of staff training. And somebody came in one day and they were giving a presentation on the differences, and we'll talk about this in just a minute as well, and how ADHD can present differently in men and boys than it can girls and women. And like everything on the women's side, I was like, well, like all of those things are me. And I didn't do anything with that. I had made it that far. So I just kind of, continued working and going through school. Also, I'm a special education teacher. And so I think that, again, is one of our strengths. I am insanely flexible and I'm a problem solver by nature. So like I could do that in the classroom all day long. You can kind of see in my note there, in the summer of 2023, we finally hit our insurance limit. So I was like, let's make this party official. And here I am. And so now it's kind of cool. We get to have that conversation about what it looks like in the classroom for educators who might have ADHD and how we can apply that for our students. All right.
All right. And then also Tara and I, this is just part of this, in true ADHD fashion, Tara and I, again, work at a university and often are called Dr. Freeberg and Dr. Maltby. So we were presenting at a conference and we were sitting at a table and people kept addressing us as Dr. Freeberg and Dr. Maltby. And I looked at Tara and I go, hey, we should get our doctorates. And so by the end of the conference day, that day, we had gotten everything together and applied to go get our doctorates, and then started our program, like not very long thereafter.
Apparently most people think about decisions like that.
Yes, there was no thought. We applied. And so my research is actually looking at general education teachers. And so their perceptions of inclusion and trying to figure out the best way of supporting students in the classroom. And that's kind of what that part of my research is. And then Tara is looking at, let me see if I remember, Tara, you're looking at barriers for paraprofessionals in Alaska to becoming special ed teachers. Am I right?
Yep.
Look at me living outside my own bubble. So, all right. So again, what is ADHD? So ADHD, you often have heard, ADHD or ADD. So it's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, right? So it's a neurodevelopmental disorder that affects both children and adults. So you will hear people calling it ADD. The DSM-5 no longer uses that term. So now it is it's ADHD. There's active, inactive, and combined. So like I have ADHD combined. My screen here.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say, here's kind of what I was referring to just a minute ago, the differences in boys and men and girls and women. And if you look at each of these, you might say to yourself, oh, well, that's interesting. Back in the day, a lot of research was done using boys and not as much focus on girls. And so now you're seeing a lot more research come out about how it does impact, boys and men a little bit differently from girls and women. And there's also additional research being done on women and men now as people age, which is really interesting to look at as well. But if you look under boys, you'll kind of see what you typically think of, kids that are jumping around and kind of hyper and really looking, for that input. You might have big feelings to like anything, like wrong pencil, shirt, big stuff. Perhaps kind of acting out in class. You do have that kind of higher incidence of conduct disorders alongside of that ADHD. And then if you look at the girls and the women, you might see more, well, you probably won't see it. And that's the thing. That's why we all get through the system. But that might be, somebody who's daydreaming, a lot like I did. I would look 5 paragraphs ahead. Oh, that's the one I need to read. Wonderful. And I could check out and think about whatever I wanted and hop right back in there. That might be, different social issues, like trying to maintain friendships, or it can be like, at least for me, something that's helpful in that aspect. Like I'm a watcher. Like I will watch everything in my surrounding and I'll kind of blend there and kind of match that energy. And it's all me, but I just do that by nature, by paying attention to all of those things. That poor organization or missed details, my desk was always a mess. My room was always a mess. And I remember, being, my mom, like, I need to clean it. And so like, wonderful, I'll go in there and clean it. And what I would do is shove everything in my closet or everything in my desk drawer. And then I would find like the, like especially in like middle school, all the cool, like little paper notes you fold up. I had a whole drawer. And so I would sit and read those literally all day long. If it's something I wanted to do, wonderful. I could do it all day long. Do you want me to like clean the dish? Not going to do that. So you might see some of those, differences right there. And then when you look kind of on the bottom on those coexisting conditions, you might see higher incidence of anxiety and depression. Or, if you're somebody who does end up identifying with some symptoms, a lot of women may have been diagnosed previously with anxiety or depression. And then if you get a comprehensive kind of evaluation, like that makes sense. This is all kind of part of this. So when you're looking at your classroom, I always encourage people, and not necessarily just because it's ADHD, but as a special education teacher and general education teacher, and pay attention to even your quiet kiddos, kind of check in, see what they're doing. The quiet kids are really easily overlooked sometimes just because there's so much going on in the classroom. So just kind of keep an eye out if you do, see that in some of your students or see some of that in yourself.
And I think we'll probably get to this slide here too, but I think 2 good points just to kind of talk about those quiet students. I had a woman, so every state every state in the United States has, under IDEA, has a parent resource center that helps parents get resources they need to support their child going with a disability. And Anna's name of the one in Alaska. And she was just saying that her child has ADHD and focusing is just not his thing. He's like, inactive ADHD. And so one of his accommodations is IEP was the teacher would walk by and bump his desk with her leg and it would just like bring him back. Like, instead of calling him out and be like, hey, Tara, pay attention. She would just walk by and bump his desk. And that was just enough to be like, oh, wait, yes. What are we doing? What day is it? What class is this? What book do I need? So, all right. So I think that this is a big one, and having been the student in the classroom who really just, again, the teachers who just got annoyed and were just like, in my childhood report cards, my parents' house burned down 2 years ago. That is how I know. I found the report from Penn State when I was 7 or 8. And in the report, like the first page talks about my IQ. And then it was like 3 more pages about how severe my ADHD was and how I needed counseling and medication. My mother, like a good 80s mother, only read the first page and just didn't really, because you don't talk about it, it doesn't happen. So having been the student who, the teachers wrote, like, has a lot to share, talks a lot in class. That's me, talks a lot in class, talks a lot in all environments. But important things, just in shifting your mindset, focusing on those unique strengths. So all students are going to have strengths, right? ADHD or not, and celebrate the ability to think outside the box and like for them generating innovative ideas. The hyper-focus potential, like the power of hyper-focus. My husband and I, we have been married for 20 years, and he has finally realized that once I decide I'm going to do something, he cannot, don't talk to me about it. Because last weekend I decided I wanted to buy shelving, put the shelving together in my garage, and empty out all of my pantries and reorganize the entire thing. He has learned that if he talks to me, I'm going to stop and be done with it. And it will sit there
right there.
for months or years because once you say something to me about it, I'm done. I'm not going to do it. So just understanding, that hyper-focused potential, my husband has realized, like, once I decide I'm going to do something, just let me go because I'm going to do it. And channeling that natural energy, enthusiasm into productive activities. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. There are different things I put in my classroom in place to help those students get those movement breaks without saying like, oh my gosh, hey, Tara, like go walk. Like, what are you doing? Because when you call out the students who are struggling, like that's when they shut down and they're not going to want to engage with you. Sorry, I'm like distracted. And that resilience piece and that diverse perspective. I think that, valuing those diverse perspectives and like looking at it through like a proactive approach. And that's again for any kid who has disability. Everyone has strengths, everyone has weaknesses, and just find those strengths and pulling on those. I think, again, I could just tell stories the entire day. I'm trying to keep my stories to go with the appropriate slides. So I will in my moment. All right, Tara.
Yes. No. Okay, we kind of talked about those. I think, what was I going to say? One of the biggest things I think I saw done in a classroom, and I am always on it. I get to support people in the classroom, and so I'll tell them, like, if I see something really good, I promise I won't claim it as my own. When we're thinking of those strengths of ADHD, I once saw a teacher use, and this is kind of tied on to that movement piece and kind of making sure we can support all of those kiddos in the classroom in a way that isn't super like obvious. She created what she called, and she used an actual toolbox. I was like, that was so clever. Her sensory toolbox. And so she had a giant toolbox in her classroom, and it had different fidgets and different, bands that kiddos could put on their desk. But she taught her entire class how to use that. So if you need a support, go grab it. Sorry, I'm totally piggybacking off your last slide, which I thought was genius, and something that I implemented in mine. So if you do find, you have some students in your classroom that need a little bit of extra movement, that's one way to go about it, by providing that support for everybody. So you're not just limiting it. Typical people might need something to do as well, and that's okay. So that kind of helps that piece, that high energy piece. But I think that strength-based piece that Brooke just hit on is something that's huge, so thinking about ways that we can't, sorry, we're going to go into like all these supports in just a minute too. But thinking about ways we can support our students in doing that in the classroom. So if I do have somebody who is incredibly focused on a piece and I need a writing piece, but it's supposed to be around something else, can I change that to their interest and kind of let them, incorporate it that way? Absolutely. And then when we're thinking about those creativity pieces, listen to them. If I'm describing something and they think about something in a different way, that is like one of my favorite things that happens in education, but in special education in particular, when somebody describes something to me in a way that I wouldn't have thought about, but it's like genius, you're like, oh my God, yes, that makes so much sense. Like, go with those things. It's okay. Like, cultivate those things and know where your students are at too, in terms of understanding their ADHD. I know for me, like, I'll share that with students. I had before, I would have what I would call safe spots in my classroom. And so, I'd lose my dry erase markers and everything all the time. And my students would chuckle. They're like, oh, did you put it in a safe spot, Tara? Miss Tara? Yep, I did. And they'd be like, it's over here. And I'd say, thank you. Oh, good morning. And so, they would kind of find those things for me. And that was okay. Like, we would talk about that. So we would share, hey, sometimes it's hard for Miss Tara to remember where I put something, and that's okay. Like, that's part of who I am. And so I think, being okay with that, sharing that with students. And then if you have parents who are open, and I think that's, sorry, I'm like all over the place now. I've worked with parents who have not shared with their kiddos their diagnosis, and that is harder for me because I think it's something that's okay to talk about, but I think that's a decision the parents need to make. But if they have shared that, then it's okay to talk with the kiddos. Like, yes, I know this part is hard, I know this sitting part is hard, but here are things you are incredibly good at, and that is awesome. Like, it's okay. I think Brooke earlier said it's just part of who she is, and 100% it's part of who I am, and understanding that I think is vital too. So that's some strengths, some supports, all of that in the good one. I will let you keep rolling.
I think too what Tara said too. I think I also told my students I have ADHD. We'll skip over this slide for now because I just realized what time it is. Okay, sorry. We will make sure you all get a copy of the slides at the end of this. And I know that Cassie put in the group chat that she'll send them out after if you signed up, and then they will also email them out. I share with my students that I had ADHD, and I share with my students now that I have ADHD because oftentimes like people just look at it as a deficit, like, well, I have ADHD, I can't do this, and I'm like, let me explain to you. I said like I also have severe ADHD, and I said you can't use it as an excuse. Like my students would say, well, I have ADHD, I can't do this. I'm like, I also have ADHD. I said you can do it. Like when you guys switch your mindset, that growth mindset really applies to working with kids with disabilities.
Yeah, and that expectation too, just to kind of piggyback on that, I think that is super huge and key. It's not a pass, any kind of disability isn't a pass. Like, does it shape how you have to interact with the world? 100%, but we're all still part of the system. I still have to meet deadlines, I still have to do these things, and so I need to find things that work for me, and then letting my students know that I have those same expectations. Exactly. Like, yep, you have that. So how do you make it work for you? And that's kind of what we're going to talk about by looking at some of these pieces. Those of you who, also have ADHD, you've probably heard a lot of these. So you've got to pick and choose the ones that work for you. Cause I love it when somebody's like, get a calendar. I'm like, dude, I got 50. Like, that's fine. 50 and all supplies.
You're bought me one for Christmas. It's still sitting. It's really pretty. It's on my desk. I have to have a checklist. It's not a calendar.
Yeah. So pick and choose what works for you. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. No. So the way we broke this down, and again, you'll get a copy, and so you will be able to look at this. This is. I jokingly told her, I'm like, if my student turned this in, I'm like, where are your citations? They're at the end. We did not put the in-text citations because it's kind of like the everything kind of combined together. So there's research done on how to support students. There's research on, adults with ADHD. So we have taken this and broken it down into, what the research says about supporting students, and then what the research says and how that applies to supporting adults in the classroom with ADHD. My joke was when I was in the classroom, I would like lose something, and then my assistants would laugh because I would walk over to the top shelf of some random bookshelf and pull it off. Like I knew where I put it. I knew exactly where I put it. It's just a matter of, how my brain worked. So for students, we have created some resources. I think there's like 11 pages. We'll give those to you at the end. We're going to show this to you at the end, and just tell you why we've made them. But clear and consistent routines. You need to make sure that you are establishing clear and consistent routines for your classroom. In my classroom, if I said it, I meant it, and I had to follow through. Like one quick story is I taught in Seattle for about 10 years, middle school students with severe emotional behavior disorders, and my one student wanted to go to the science center so bad. He was just yeah, I'm gonna put up. I gotta stop looking at the chat and get distracted.
You talk. I'm following it for a little bit.
Really wanted to go to the science center, and so planned this whole field trip. And that morning, I teach students who 4 of them had parole officers, and so we had some giant behaviors in my class. I love those kids, and they made giant gains, and they are all now functioning adults, and it's great. And so that morning, he is sitting there, and you have to understand the scope of behaviors. This is minimal. He's throwing pencils in the air, trying to stick them in the ceiling. That's nothing for my room. That's nothing. But for whatever reason, I said, hey, if you keep doing that, you're not going to be able to go. He looks at me and throws it in the air. And so I'm like, okay. So I go call mom because I always made sure I had a rock solid and I could do a whole presentation on just parent involvement and like how to get parents like on making sure that you're part of the same team and not opposite teams. Calls mom like, hey, I told this student this. Like, and she's like, oh, yep, nope, he can't go. And I'm like, yep, I'm sorry. I was devastated. But I knew him, and I knew that if I let him go, that was just the start of his pushing his buttons. So like establish, clear and they knew exactly when I said it that I meant it. I think the hardest thing when I had students in the classroom who were included where the teachers were kind of, this is like a bad way, like wishy-washy of like, oh yeah, Tara, that's fine. You can go do that. Like, no, Logan, you have to do this. You just let Tara do that. Like, why do I have to do something different? So just consistent across the board. I think, when you have kiddos who are, hyperactive, have a hard time focusing as a teacher, I've been there. I taught for 20 years. I think that I get it that sometimes, that's frustrating and it's hard to like keep your class focused. We'll talk about ways that's, kind of support those students as we keep going here. But anyway, see, this is my example. We talk about a routine. This is what my day looks like because I need to have a schedule. And I had to make this as part of my doctoral work. Our very first class, we had to like show that we could do it. And so we had to like break down how our day was. I still follow this. I still use this exact one. It's been 3 years.
Which is funny, and we can talk about differences. What might work for some people does not work for everybody. I was in probably, I don't know, I'm forgetting the word, and it's really easy, and it's going to make me mad, but I was insanely angry that I had to make one of those because I was like, I can do my own. Thank you. I can't live and die by a schedule like that. I need to write down what I need to do in a day, but I need to then have the flexibility to do it whenever I want. So like I sit down and write it down and do it. I cannot. I was super mad I had to even do that.
And if I don't have a time blocked off, and we'll show you on the resources, kind of like we took our brains and put that in the resources. I just need a window of time to do the thing. So that was kind of, everyone's different. Environmental supports, Tara, do you want to?
Yep. I'm going to probably, just for the sake of time too, because it's 8:32, and we're going to show you some good tools we've made for you in a little bit and leave a few minutes for questions. So I think what I'm going to do is combine this one and the next one. So kind of talk about environmental support and visual supports, kind of all in the same bag. Just to kind of combine them together. Essentially, when we're thinking about supporting our students, we want it to be accessed by everybody, no matter where they're at. And one great way to do that is through visuals and visual representation, especially if it's a routine that's more abstract. So if it's something that's not concrete for the student, if you can figure out a way to put that down so they can see it and reference that, that's going to, and you too, super, super helpful. So we'll kind of combine those right now. When we're thinking about those environmental supports, definitely think about how you've got your classroom organized and that physical space. One of my favorite things, depending on your grade level, it's going to look different, where you're at in high school. You might have, your desks separate. So people, can work independently, or you might have them in groups if it's a group activity. When you're thinking about younger students, kind of those elementary ages, really think about, how you have everything set up. If I have an activity like, a snack table or something, or stations, if I'm doing stations and I just want 4 people at a station, I'm going to make sure only 4 chairs are there. So it's not like, hey, I get there. Oh, wait, no, I only want 4 people there. If I have 4 chairs, oh, it's full, you can go to another station. So that environmental support is telling students what they need to know, and me, I don't have to think about it. Thinking about, how you support yourself, you're going to do that same thing for you. So you're going to have things where you need them the best you can. I have figured out, and it's hard because I still throw my car keys everywhere. I throw it like it just is. It is what it is. But if,
AirTag, Tara. I use an AirTag. That's how I find my car keys.
That is smart. I need to. But if I know, every morning I put my materials on my desk that I'm going to use, like that is enough of a structure that I can do that and not be like tied to it. Calendars, huge, writing things down again, especially thinking about, when we're looking at all the fun paperwork, we've got IEPs there. I have to, at the beginning of the year, kind of sit down, map it out, and then I need to work backwards too. So if my due date for my student is here, for their, 3-year reevaluation where we determine whether or not they're still eligible. I know that I need, and I learned this lesson the hard way too. I'll share that in a second. I need to back up on my calendar a good 3 months to start that process. So I need to send those things out. I need to email, the psych to get kind of those things rolling. And I need to see that, because if I don't see that on my calendar, all of a sudden I'm like, oh, hey, guess who has a reeval coming up, which is what I did the very first time. And I went to my mentor teacher. She's like, oh, that's like next week. I was like, yeah, no problem, right? She's like, well, you should have started it here. So now I know. So I write all of that down. I go back, I track it, and then I have a visual. So when I sit down, at the end of each night, I have to look at what I'm going to do the next day. Otherwise, I'll forget everything and not do it. So if I see it, that's going to let me know to get that process started. And I know that I need to have those, again, written down well in advance, so I know to start it. Because if you're anything like me, I'll think about all of these things 800 times a day, right up until the day. And then all of a sudden, oh my God, it's the day and I don't have it done because I had lots of time. So making those things crystal clear for you is super helpful. And just, kind of bouncing back like it is for your students. I want to go to the next one, and I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, and then I have something to add to this one.
Yeah.
Just for students. And so oftentimes I hear general education teachers talk about how, like, oh my gosh, like they just keep moving. And kids know when you're like, oh my gosh, I need you to go for a walk, get out of here, go do something. I used to use folders in my classroom. So I had a green folder, a yellow folder, and a red folder. And I had people in the school who knew exactly what those folders meant. My green folder meant, because I would just say, oh, hey, Tara, can you take this green folder to like Miss Bartouche? That green folder meant to Miss Bartouche, like, oh, hey, this kid just needs to walk. And so she would write down like a quick note or something and put it in and tell, oh my gosh, thank you so much for being helpful. And that student would come back to me. The yellow folder, if they would go to the office, like, hey, go see, Miss Lisa in the office. The yellow folder would show up. That meant this kid is dysregulated and I need to come support them. One of my assistants is going to come back to my classroom. I'll be there in a minute. That's what the folder just meant. It was a visual for the adult to know, hold this kid, like Brooke will be right there. And then the red folder meant like bad things are happening. This is how I had to get the student out of my room before they escalated in a negative way. And I will be right there, just distract them. Like, it was just a way, that way students, they don't know what those folders meant, but it was a way for them to not, and I used them for everybody. It didn't matter the students, kind of the hall passes. But that way those students were able to like get support without me radioing saying, hey, like Tara's coming down. She's not listening. She needs a break. Like, it was just this very visual thing. So
yeah, thinking about visual stuff. I put the official name in the chat, but not that anybody needs to know that, but I always think it's fun to throw it out there. That physical environment setup, kind of, we talked about the chairs. My favorite illustration of that, I was called in to support a classroom, and it was a second grade classroom. And it was giant, which is awesome. Usually we're like shoved in closets for special education, but huge. And all of the furniture was aligned on like around the perimeter of the classroom. So all the tables and everything, there was just a giant space in the middle. And so this little guy would come in every day, chuck his bag down and just do laps, as then the teachers would try and catch them. And it was really, really fun. And they're like, why is this happening? And so I got to, hang out with them all day, and I watched them go to gym class, and that was 100% the routine. So they walk in, and that is the expectation. They run around. And so you're thinking about this student who comes into his classroom, it looks like a giant racetrack. And so we looked at just structuring the classroom a little bit different. So we put kind of the lockers when you'd come in. You got to watch Fire Code too. That's fun. But put the lockers right there so they knew visually, hang up their backpack. And then as they kind of traversed around that, the breakfast table was there with their snack out. So all of a sudden, hey, we sit down. There's food right there. Wonderful. I'll sit down and eat. So again, that environment is telling them everything they need to know. It no longer looks like a racetrack, but hey, hang up my backpack. Oh, hey, there's food. Let me sit down. Think about those things again that make those, abstract things concrete. All right, go for it.
All right, and I'm going to skip over the visual aid part.
Yep.
You can all read, because we made a resource for you, just an example. So I think I'm going to wait till we show the examples, because we can talk about it then. And I just realized what time it is, and we're on 12. So task management, breaking things down. I think that oftentimes when you think about it, when teachers are giving directions, they will give multi-step directions in one breath, right? And not just students with ADHD, many students struggle with that. And so an example of that is, okay, get out your math book, get your pencil. We're going to turn to page 43, and then we're going to do the first 5 problems. It's in like just quick succession. So just making sure that if you, with your instructions, like breaking them down to very simple, okay, everyone, math book. I watched a teacher one time. I laughed at first. I was like, actually, that's kind of brilliant. He's like, okay, pencil up. And they all put their pencil up. He's like, okay, pencil. And he would just do silly things with them. But just to make sure everyone, he broke it down. It was a first grade classroom. Every single step they all did together. And it wasn't the big group of, of information at one time. So breaking it down, clear, concise directions. And then like for myself, like when I have a bunch of things to do, Tara talked about writing everything down. I cannot write things down. I will lose it. On my iPhone, I started typing it out, then I forgot to finish it. I think it's the Remind app where you can put like a list of everything you need to do. And it's right on my home, like when I open my phone, it's my calendar and it's a Remind app, and it has everything I need to do. And it turns red if it's past the date I put it in, and it stresses me out. So that's my motivation to like get it done. And then, just making sure like you're offering yourself rewards. I read something, I was reading about, ADHD, and someone said they wear their shoes in their house and they have to do like their laundry because they hate wearing shoes. And so they keep their shoes on to remind them that they're doing laundry. So that way they can't take their shoes off until they finish the laundry. I'm like, that's sort of brilliant because I also hate shoes.
Same.
And anything with task management?
I was just going to add, again, it kind of goes back to that environmental support too. So when we're breaking things down, if there's any way you can have those routines visually accessible for the students who need it. So maybe, reading, boop, 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 have those steps on the board. You might not have the exact page, but that rest of that routine can be there. And what you want to accomplish by having that visual is to help redirect that student to answer their own questions too. So I've had students where I could have it on the board for most people, but then I've also made independent little kind of task analysis checklists for different activities for students that they can have on their desk. So I come to this, I sit down and I can read through my steps. Okay, put my backpack away, look at the teacher, wait for instructions, which sounds really simple, but it's a way for that student to kind of cue into what they need to do without asking for outside help. They're using their own environmental clues. And then eventually you can fade those supports. But having those things visually accessible just kind of helps check that person in. Again, that auditory piece, that short-term kind of processing memory can be challenging for individuals with ADHD, thinking about meetings and stuff, especially. Like I would go, I understand everything. And then when they're like, great, summarize, what'd you talk about? I'm like, oh, I don't know. I do know. It's all in my long-term memory. If I have it written down, I can summarize it for you, but I cannot pull it from that to save my life. And that's kind of a lot with our students. So if you can figure out ways to have those little tasks there, they can answer those questions and know like, hey, I've got a handle on this.
Yeah. And I think the nice thing too, when you're setting up your classroom, don't think of it as, there's the whole UDL approach, right? Which is like setting up your classroom so everyone can access everything. If you've ever heard of the curb cut, I'm trying to think of the way of putting this. So like when you set your classroom up, right, and you offer those visual schedules, offer them to everybody. So the curb cut effect. So the curb cut effect is, whenever they put in the lower part of sidewalks, right, they put those in so individuals who with mobility challenges are able to, go up the sidewalk without getting hurt. They realized once they put those curb cuts in that those benefited everybody. They benefit little kids. They benefit moms with strollers. They benefit people who may be on bikes. They benefit individuals who might be on crutches. It's going to benefit not just the people who it was designed for. So when you're putting things in your classroom, those visual schedules, you may make those visual schedules with the idea that your students with disabilities need those, but you're going to have other students in your classroom who will also benefit from having that available. All right.
This kind of ties right on into that, that multisensory learning approach. Think about, especially for the students, how are we presenting information? Think about what the activity entails. So, thinking about flexible seating, like, do I have a kid who needs a tea stool or a bouncy ball, or even just a simple flex band on their chair? I don't know if you guys have seen those. They're my favorite. It just kind of goes around the bottom of the chair. It's like a rubber band, and then they can move it or stomp on it, whatever. Get a grant, do it for your whole class. anything you can do that just allows those little bits in there is going to be wonderful. And again, it can be available for anybody that kind of needs that. Thinking about how we can make things, interactive or hands-on. Can everything? No, but there are elements of things that you can do. Thinking about, you and what that looks like. How can you support yourself throughout the day? I love the first one there, have multiple drink options. I hate that I can't see everybody because I really want to do a survey and see how many people have like 7 drinks on their desk. I only have 2 right now and I'm running short on coffee and it's really killing me. But have different things that kind of stimulate you throughout the day. Fidgets, I don't have it on right now, but I have a fun fidget right now. Do you? You can also see me like in my fun little movie chair that I never stop swinging back and forth. All of those things that can help you and your students help. So if you can incorporate, different pieces into your lesson like that, that's going to help as well.
And just, movement breaks, just getting your students up and moving. I tell my students now when they're, going off to be teachers, I'm like, I am jealous of you guys because last century I didn't have YouTube to turn on these like 30-second brain breaks. So Annika, I see your question about strategies to encourage writing. It's not on our slides, but I'll just tell you one thing that I have done. If you've ever seen like the fidgets were really popular like in the early 2000s, like the fidget spinners. I have used those very successfully with my students to keep them on task. And I will tell you, again, I worked with kiddos who have emotional behavior disorders. I have rated how much they hurt when they throw them at you. But if it's something you can have safely in your classroom, my students, we would get it spinning on their desk because they'll spin really quietly. And they would write while it was spinning, right? And they would write or do the math problems while it's spinning. And when it stopped, they put a tally at the top of the paper. And then they would keep going. So they would see how much they could get done while the fidget spinner was going. And like that was so successful for the writing portion. It was really successful for the math in terms of the actual writing. In terms of students who hate to write, right? Allowing them. So I had a student who is going off to her internship next year and she was not passing her writing practice and she was very stressed out. And so I explained to her, I'm like, this is how my brain works. Like talk to text. So if your student is writing, sometimes it's just really hard. Graphic organizers were the bane of my existence. If you gave me a graphic organizer and you told me I had to fill it out, forget it. Like our doctorate, we had to provide an outline. I wrote my chapter first and then I made the outline after because I had to. So for this student, talk to text. So she sat there and she just would spill out what she was doing. And then once she had the information, she had a much easier time like going through and editing that paper in order to turn it in. And then she actually has practiced that and she just passed her writing praxis. Not that you can do, talk to text in the practice that I know of, but that just really helped her understand how her brain worked. I don't know if that's helpful. Every kid is kind of different. And I think too, in terms of kids who refuse to accept any kind of help, there's a book out there. It's called Fostering Resilient Learners. And I don't have it in our slides either. So I'll try to remember to type it in here because I stopped now. I cannot do 2 things at once. But Fostering Resilient Learners is a phenomenal book. I use that in my courses as well. It just talks about, that relationship building and the idea behind like how to support students. All right. Technology part, and then we'll come back and keep answering questions because I've been where you are. I see your comments about students who accept any kind of help. I think in terms of teaching, and I know that like I told Tara jokingly, like I know that people get really frustrated when they hear like building a relationship. They're like, I have 140 students. I can't build a relationship with all of them. I also at one point had 156 students and I built a relationship with all of them. And sometimes it's just knowing their name, like starting with knowing their name. I used to own horses. And this is my really bad analogy in terms of this. I said, in this field of 30 horses, I only had 2 of those. Inevitably, once a year, those horses would break out of the fence, right? And so it just transfers so much to my classroom. I knew which horse I had to go grab first. I had to go get this horse first. If I got this horse and brought this horse in, most of the rest of the herd would follow that horse, right? So in your classroom, you're going to quickly figure out who your leaders are, right? And also who your students are who are going to try everything in their power to get you off task and to like disrail the the learning, right? And so focusing on like, so got that horse in, and then, going and working with those last two to get them to come in. So kind of trying to figure out ways that you can make that student feel like a leader in your classroom. So that might be that they are going to be your helper. If you're doing a writing, I had a student who hated writing, and come to find out that his classroom teacher was having them write journals about what they did the night before. I'm like, well, his dad beat him probably. That's probably what happened the night before. And so I talked to her about like, you can't keep asking them to write about their home life. She's like, well, it's a standard. I'm like, that's great. And we'll get there. But right now, like, you need to give him the option to not talk about home. And so he wrote about aliens. It's really funny because he started writing about aliens kidnapping me instead. And then halfway through his writing, he started to feel bad. He's like, well, I don't want to write this. I'm like, listen, dude, you're halfway into this project. Like, just keep going. So then the aliens brought me back. So just, Tara talks about the environment. Think about kind of like how it is you're teaching and seeing if you can, help make that student the leader. Maybe asking them if you're doing something on the board, like kids love to have 45 math problems. They love to have 45 watermelons. They love 45 watermelons. Like, okay, well, Tara has 45 watermelons and then she sells 4 of them to Cassie. How many watermelons does she have left? Like, just things to like engage them. Technology piece, we talked about the talk to text in order to help them support their writing. It's amazing to me what kids will say. And then once they have it down, helping them figure out the beginning, the middle, the end, I like highlighting it and just, telling them like, I want you to go and highlight what parts you think would make a good start to your story. What parts do you think would make a good middle of your story? And what parts make a good end of your story? And sometimes, I tell my own boys, I'm like, fast is slow and slow is fast. Sometimes, you're like, wait, I know that they can do this. I know they can do this. That's great. You know that they can write sentences, but maybe they're not ready to write sentences. So maybe it is they're drawing a picture and labeling, and you're allowing them to feel very successful at doing something that you know that they can already do. But them feeling really successful in doing that thing and having that positive praise of like, wow, really great job. Even though, like, you can write paragraphs. I know this, but you know what? We're going to go slow to go fast.
Well, you skipped to, on that note, the positive reinforcement slide. And then I think we'll share our resources and leave a little time for questions. But I love that you jumped right to that because that is so important to remember. A lot of our learners, and perhaps yourself, who do have ADHD, tend to internalize sometimes a lot of the things that they do wrong and things that can be hard. And so when you're thinking about writing and different activities that take a lot of planning, you have to sit, you have to think about it, you have to tell your muscles what to do, you have to get it on paper, you have to get that correct. Like, know which pieces when you're doing an assignment you're looking for. So like Brooke was saying, if it's creating the writing, wonderful, tell me, write it down, do that piece, and then we'll work on the handwriting. And then when you do see things, if it's handwriting, wonderful, then here's a silly goofy sentence, see if you can write that out. Really find the things that they're doing well and really praise them in a way that works for them. Some kids don't want a lot of flash. You might need to do it kind of individually, but really find those things they're doing well. Hey, I noticed, when we did A, B, and C, you immediately got your books out. I didn't need to remind you. Like, that is fantastic. Thank you. Great job. Like, obviously we're going to need to make corrections here and there, but really capitalize on the things that they're doing correct. That's going to bring, it sounds so basic, I know, but like that brings a lot of change to an environment right away, just focusing on the things you want to see. And then kind of do that for all your kids. Like, hey, I see how we got our books out. That's wonderful. Like, that is a really small thing that can have a huge impact on your class. And then when we're thinking about that piece, make sure that you understand, again, I like to frame it like everybody's trying to do the best they can. Nobody wants to do a bad job. Nobody wants to hear that they're not doing well. And so we need to recognize and understand that we have to teach those things very explicitly that we want to see. It's not as simple for a student with, a disability, and thinking about ADHD in particular, to just kind of observe everybody and decide, oh, hey, that's what I'm supposed to do. Okay, here we go. We need to explicitly teach those routines we want to see, even those tiny pieces. And remember, sometimes a kid can have it for a day or two and then they might not the next day. And that's okay too. That's very typical. That's not a kiddo like actively and sometimes they might actively be not, but a lot of the times, like, it might not be there that day. They might be, overstimulated. There might be other things that are going on and they can't access it. So know that. And then thinking about yourselves, recognize the things that you're doing well too. I know, like, my morning was bonkers trying to get here, and that's just who I am, but I made it and we're here, and that is okay. So, like, recognize that, like, things might be challenging, but you are doing a good job. Like, know that. All right, resources for you.
Yeah, so I'm going to share our resources. I saw someone asked if we have another list. This is another fun ADHD story of Brooke and Tara. We went to a conference in Florida, Alicia, in January. We picked it specifically because it was Florida, and we live in Alaska where it's -40. And so it snowed while we were there. And so we actually have started writing a book based on this. And so obviously we have other stuff to get done, but we'll try to add more resources. We have our contact info. Like, please feel free to reach out. We are here to support everybody. So this is just some resources we've made for you, kind of things we talked about. Like, so obviously you can use it however you wish. So just the idea of when you have a plan, sometimes it's overwhelming to see a giant list of a million things. So, like, having it broke down into, like, this is something I need to do in the morning. Taking your meds. The number of times I have forgotten to take my medication is astounding. And I get to work and I'll call Tara and I'm like, guess what I forgot today? I know it. I know I forgot it. So I keep a little extra thing of meds in my backpack. I think it's also super important. I tell my students too, like, finding your joy. So finding something that brings you joy and makes you really happy. So there's that, important and not important. This is another different version of this. Sometimes you just need a list of what you need to do, and, like, it doesn't matter on the time. So, like, the brain dump. So habits.
Things like, if I don't write something down, it's gone. And knowing that, I've had students I've had to do that for too, that love questions, and you can't answer them all, but they don't want to forget them. So, like, I had a little guy, I made a picture of her brain, like, write your thoughts in here and I will address them later. But, like, yeah, get it out in a way that works for you and them.
Yes. Yeah. And, like, with ADHD, I never remember to drink water ever unless I physically go get the water. So, like, a habit tracker, I would like to tell you that I am successful in using the habit tracker. I am not, but for many people I know with ADHD,
so there you go.
Yeah, if that works for you, there you go. So priority matrix. So just the idea that, sometimes just figuring out, because I also have anxiety. And so trying to figure out what is important I have to get done, right? What's important, but, like, not urgent. So, like, at my house, it's important that I, like, go outside and I, like, actually take care of the yard. It will never happen. It needs to happen, but it's not urgent. So just prioritizing your things there. Sometimes just a to-do list. I made this one kind of cutesy, so you could use it for your students. Same thing down here, and treat yourself, right? We talked about that reward system. So having something to reward yourself. I'm, like, going through really fast. We talked about visual schedules. This is kind of what one looks like if you've not seen one. Lesson picks is like $36 US a year. Lesson picks is amazing. And you can make anything a lesson pick.
And there's pre-made, so you don't have to spend your time making it, which is the best.
Yeah, $36 US, highly recommend it. We talked about, again, I made you an example of a visual schedule. So your daily routine, just that you would have Velcro and laminate, and then students I've had students who like everything on and they take them off as they do them. And I have students who like to put things on as they do them, because at that point they've learned their routine. So it's, the forward chaining, backward chaining. So that's just an example. Sometimes students need to know what's next, right? So, like, first you're going to get dressed and then you're going to brush your teeth. Or, first you're going to eat dinner and then you're going to get iPad. So the visual of being able to see that. So because I'm a very funny person, I made first you're going to clean and then you're going to drink wine. That's for you. That's not for your students. Just some examples of visual schedules.
Yeah. And thinking about kind of the hierarchy of visuals as well, just keep in mind, if you do work with older students, that are readers, a written list is a visual schedule. All of those things that we use too are visuals, and they're helpful in the real world. And I think that's important to be able to articulate to general education teachers and maybe parents as well. Sometimes you might hear the pushback, well, they don't have visuals in the real world. Well, we do, and I live and die by them. Yes. I have a list on my phone. I have a calendar on my phone. And so all of those things count as well. All right.
I feel like we need to come back, Cassie, just to answer questions.
Yeah, I would love that if you're willing. That would be
Yeah,
wonderful.
we'll come back just to answer questions.
That was a very fast hour.
I know.
And it seems like everybody is just so happy, looking forward to seeing you guys again. And thank you so much for the resources. And
Yeah, we'd love to come back.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Question and answer would be easy peasy for sure.
Yeah, we just have to come back and just do question and answer.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Tara. Thank you, Brooke. If you want to keep continuing this conversation, we'll see you again. And everybody, thank you for joining. I appreciate it. This recording will be up on our website, and Tara and Brooke's resources again are in the chat, and you can email us and email them. And again, thank you so much. You guys were wonderful today, and we really appreciated having you.
Little tip of the iceberg. Thank you guys. It's been fun.
Thank you so much for having us.
Everybody.
Farewell.
Farewell.